usually knocked out a few meals before they made their move. Crispian was out there under the name Jay Jackson. Dave Richards, who I'd worked with in Israel, was out there. Paul McKenna did a stint. There were others who I didn't know, but would come to know later. Laser was blasting out at this time. It was putting out hits about a mile or two away from the roster of Revenge. It didn't really seem quite fair to us. We had a far better ship than they did. Better generators, better transmitters, the best mast ever seen on a radio ship, better everything really, but they had all the listeners. And that was because they had a format and we didn't. There was nothing wrong with any of the Caroline people, but everyone was just going on and playing what they liked. So one moment Caroline was a heavy rock station, then there might be a soul and reggae show presented by someone who was keen on that sort of stuff, and someone else might be feeling a bit nostalgic and play a few oldies. Nobody ever really told us what the thing was supposed to sound like, because nobody really knew. When I got to shore after my first tour of duty, I was told which pub to meet in for a discussion about how it had gone, and the very faint possibility of getting some money. There sat Tom Anderson and a guy we knew as Mango Mike, so called because of his fondness for Caribbean music. They asked me what I thought of the station, and I told them. I said basically that I thought it was rubbish. I bemoaned the lack of a format and indeed any sort of guidance, and said that I thought the listener would have a hard job sticking with Caroline as long as the station lurched from style to style. And I added that I thought Laser sounded a whole lot better. I sensed that my comments weren't really being very well received. But before we could have a more detailed discussion, Ronan walked in and sat down. And I had never met Ronan before this, but I had seen pictures of him and I had no difficulty in recognising him. He asked me what I thought of the radio station. Well, I was brought up to be polite. And if I'd met him earlier in the day, I would probably have been a lot more diplomatic. You know, you don't really want to be telling the man who created Radio Caroline that his creation is unlistenable. But given what I just said to the others at the table, I felt I couldn't really sugarcoat my opinion. So I told him, basically, that I thought it was appalling. To my surprise, he said, I completely agree. What would you do about it? Well, by this time, I had got a bit of radio experience. I'd worked for a number of stations with a number of people, and I was able to tell him precisely what I'd do with it. I explained about the need for consistency, and I felt that we wouldn't have to sound like Laser to be successful. We could sound like Caroline. We could sound pretty much like anything you like, so long as we stuck to it. The listener needed to know that if they tuned in today, they'd get the same station that they heard yesterday. And Ronan agreed. He asked me to do it, and that's how I became the programme controller of Radio Caroline at that time. I shan't bore you with the details of how formats work, but essentially it's a question of drawing up lists of songs. We had lists of thousands of them. It was quite a broad format that we set up, dividing them into categories by age and style, and making sure that a decent mix of the right stuff gets played throughout the day. It worked. And we were soon one of the most popular stations in the south of England. There are audience surveys to back up that claim. Laser was very much of a top 40 station. We played popular artists, but went much deeper into their catalogue. I mean, even the Beatles, I don't know how many hits the Beatles have had, probably a couple of dozen, but we had 120 Beatles songs on our format. So, you know, we would play not just the hit singles, but also some of the better-known album tracks of all artists, not just the Beatles, but, you know, I just give that as an example. I tried to ensure that it sounded like Caroline, respecting the station's history and the sort of music that it was famous for playing, but also included a healthy measure of modern stuff.